Tips are back, of course, we're talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth, and we're here just to look at another compilation of information for the game, of course. A lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. Probably my favorite thing, which we're just going to hop right into, is that for Red 13, they're finally giving us something pretty cool for him. When it came to the original game, obviously, once you leave Cosmo Canyon, Red 13 is like a very different character, right? Whenever he learns the truth of his dad, he kind of embraces the name Naoki and all that other shit. They've actually added in a personality difference for the character of Red 13 for like side content and quests and things like that, based on whether you're doing it pre or post Cosmo Canyon. So with this question and answer, it's not necessarily important in terms of like new information, but it's that bottom paragraph that we're interested in, where Hamaguchi says, a fun little tidbit that I wanted to share about that is in the original, you may remember that Red 13, if you go to Cosmo Canyon, once you go there, his personality changes a bit. And considering that his personality changes, we have it designed so that all quests in the game kind of has a Red 13 and a Naoki version. So for people, it has all options available for that. And I mean, holy shit, right? What an insane attention to detail. That's something that was absolutely not necessary, that they just went that extra step, right? That just shows how much they give a shit when it comes to the remake project. Like, they're just doing every possible thing they can to make Rebirth as good as it can possibly be. Like, there's no reason they had to do that. To make Red 13 act a little bit differently on, like, side content and side quests and shit, based on whether you're doing it, like, post-Cosmo Canyon. But they just went that extra step. It's insane to think about. It also gives you incentive to use the character, but also do multiple playthroughs with the character, or at least do multiple playthroughs of quests, because obviously we can restart them and shit. With him, like, whether it's post or pre, like, Cosmo Canyon. Like, that's so cool, man. It's just such an interesting thing that they did. You have an example of a side quest involving Red 13 from the TGS presentation, right? Where we go to, like, the farm, and we're trying to figure out what, like, attack the cattle. Red 13 says, like, the troll's kind of, like, old or whatever, been a few days, and we use the chocobo to track it down because they have a better sense of smell. And we're told by Hamaguchi that, like, Red 13's, like, jealous, essentially, that the chocobo's kind of overtaken his role as, like, the tracker or whatever. And I'm wondering how that, like, side quest is going to play out differently, or the dialogue's going to be a little bit different or whatever, if we're doing it, like, post-Cosmo Canyon. And that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, this is very exciting. I think it's really fucking cool, man. We'll just continue looking at the things that are worth talking about from the Screen Rant interview, but they say, first, I would love to hear what you think the most important things are that have changed in this new version of the game. And Hamaguchi has some long-ass answers in this interview, so we're just going to talk about the parts that I think are worth talking about. But he says, and a core central thought within me regarding the world map as well is, considering that this remake series is a trilogy and is made up of 3 separate parts, we really wanted to provide sort of a new and continuously enhanced experience going from remake and rebirth, just so that there's this trajectory of users continuously feeling excitement at the new features that are presented, and just this different gaming experience that one can have by playing each game. And in that way, going from remake to rebirth, or the first to second title, and then second to third, then now players are excited about, well, what's coming next, what's coming in the second title, then what's coming after that, is it going to be an entirely new experience? And so by continuing to change and evolve in that sense, we wanted to provide that, and that was a big theme for me going into this as well. So kind of a TLDR and all that, they're going to try to make the games better as they go, essentially, which we've seen the giant leap from remake to rebirth. I don't know how much bigger and better it can get with the third game, in terms of, like, how much more open world can the game get type of shit or whatever? How much more gaming, like, mechanics and things can they add to the world? I don't know exactly, but at least the idea is to get better as they go. So they're going to take what they do in Rebirth, which they've improved the fucking remake project a shit ton in the second game, and they're trying to get better in the third game, which is what I said before. I've said that for me right now, just looking at trailers and gameplay for Rebirth, it looks like the best Final Fantasy game I've ever fucking seen. And only maybe going to be surpassed by the third game. I've said that multiple times, I think, in other videos and shit. So I don't know how they can make the third game better, but at least that's the goal, it seems like. It will be kind of interesting to, like, compare Rebirth to the third game once that happens, right? Because I'm kind of curious how they're going to improve upon Rebirth, just because we're getting the majority of the world in this game. We're getting, like, a shit ton of, like, you know, side quests and mini games all over the world to do and stuff like that. And what's really left, right? Like, we got, like, the rest of, like, the northern continent, because that's where the Forgotten Capital is. But we got Great Glacier, Gaia Cliffs, and, like, obviously Northern Crater, whatever. So I just don't know, in, like, the Wutai area. Like, that's going to be, like, in the third game, and maybe, I guess, like, the southern continents and stuff, or islands where, like, Medil and Benor and stuff are. So I just don't know what, like, there's not a whole lot of world left, technically. There's a lot of story left when it comes to the third game, but there's just not a whole lot of world left. So I'm kind of curious how they're going to, obviously, I guess we have the submarine, though. We do have the ocean. Like, that's, the fact that we can swim and traverse in the water in this game, I think would, in a roundabout way, give us a little bit of confirmation, I would think, potentially, of, like, being able to use a submarine, and the fact that they're not really cutting stuff, it seems like, from the OG FF7. I guess if they add in, like, the whole underwater exploration, that's actually something that could be very unique to the third game. Rebirth director Hamaguchi says that when it comes to Cloud in the Newbomb flashback, it's not just Cloud alone, it's a blend of Cloud's memories and Zack's memories. So that right there is not news, obviously, to any sort of FF7 fan. You know what's going on with the Calm flashback, but we talked about it before in previous videos where, like, the devs are just, like, constantly like leaning into the fact that like this is Zack, right? Like they're constantly talking about that. And obviously, we had the re-release of Crisis Core almost a year ago with Crisis Core Union that just straight up tells you what's going on, what happens with the Nibelheim incident. So like whenever if you play that as like a new FF7 player or fan, and then you're getting into Rebirth, you're gonna know that like none of this is true. Like so, like, it's why I talk about things being different all the time on the channel, and I don't know what that's gonna constitute exactly. I'm not somebody who's gonna try to predict and try to be right with everything when it comes to like the remake project. I've said before in other videos though that I think Cloud's gonna learn the truth sooner, and it's stuff like this where they're just giving away like that twist all the time. What's supposed to be this big revelation in the Final Fantasy VII story. I don't know when and where it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in Rebirth. As I pointed out like 100 times on this damn channel, like with the fucking first trailer we got for Rebirth, Cloud says Zack's name, right? In the Japanese version of the trailer, he straight up name dropped Zack, which in remake with like the park segment when he's talking to Aerith, he couldn't even hear Zack's name without getting his like headaches and shit or whatever, right? Little glitches and shit. So I've always said that that's a change I think is going to happen. I don't know when and where it's going to be exactly. Maybe the Nibelheim area once we get there later on in the story. I don't know exactly. I don't know how they're going to do it because the live stream scene is so iconic and like a lot of people's favorite scene from FF7 original. So you can't really change that, but you could do that kind of anywhere. It doesn't have to be like post North Crater mid-deal, right? It can give other stuff too with remake, like Hojo straight up telling Cloud that, like he tells him like, oh no, you were never in Soldier, my boy, or whatever. And obviously Cloud has a headache in the moment, so maybe he didn't quite hear Hojo say that, but Hojo says that shit. So since the first game in the remake project, they've been like teasing that Cloud isn't who he says he is, right? They've been like leaning into like the unreliable narrator and stuff, and that his history isn't what he thinks it is or whatever the fuck. So I feel like things are going to be different. I just don't know exactly how they're going to go about doing it. I don't know. Hamaguchi says the idea of change and anticipation is a central theme in the remake. During remake's development, they introduced the Whispers to make users contemplate the possibilities of future changes. The Whispers will also appear in FF7 Rebirth. So I actually want to read that just because we talk about changes a lot on the channel, and obviously other people in the community talk about changes for the the remake project, things being a little bit different. And I wanted to mention this because like when we talk about that, there's obviously the purists or the people that think that like the story isn't going to change or don't want the story to change, but it's like that's the intention, though, from the developers, is to anticipate potential change. Even if it doesn't happen, even if by the end of the trilogy, it's just, like 90, 95% FF7 original, we kind of, Meteor happens, Black Materia, fucking Bizarro Sephiroth, Safer Sephiroth, all that shit. Like, maybe the game concludes the exact same, but it's still the intention by the devs for you to talk and speculate on changes. So it's always annoying to me when we talk about the show on Twitter or on videos and people are like, it's not going to change. They're not changing anything. Quit being fucking stupid. And it's like, you're clearly not paying attention to shit because this is the intention by people making the fucking game. Also with stuff like Zack being alive, like if Zack is truly alive, right, and they're not just, lying to us about that. If he's truly alive, how can the story not be different? And with what takes place in Chapter 18 and the whole theme of remake was breaking away from Destiny, we beat the Whisper Harbinger, the Whispers are still here, we don't know how they're going to be implemented into Rebirth, but we defeated the Whisper Harbinger, who seemingly was controlling the Whispers and trying to keep Destiny in line, right? So it's like, I don't know how, with what we get in remake, and how things aren't going to be different. I know in other interviews, and this is what's so annoying about the devs sometimes, in other interviews they do talk about not wanting to deviate from the FF7 story, etc., whatever. I know we've had this conversation a lot over the last, 4 years at this point. Almost 5 years, goddamn, if we're talking, 2019, 2020 till now. Jesus. It's just, I just think things are going to be different. I don't know to what degree, I don't know what percentage, 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it, 90-10. But I just think things are going to be different. I don't know when and where exactly. They talk a lot about things being different or a big surprise or whatever, Forgotten Capital, and what would that be, right? We talked about that, I think, with the last video or the video before it. What is the big surprise? Because if it's Aerith dying, that's not a goddamn surprise, right? So something's got to be different somewhere. So right here we have an interesting quote from Hamaguchi from the Tech Raptor interview that says, one of the most applauded and contentious aspects of Final Fantasy VII Remake is the fact that the story hints at possibly changing the status quo, to which Hamaguchi says, will Cloud and others defy destiny? Will things be played out exactly the same as that of the original title? That is one question we'll be exploring. So just kind of want to continue the conversation there with that quote from Hamaguchi, because it's the main guy right now, the main director or whatever for Rebirth, who himself is saying, will things play out the same? Now, whether or not they will or won't remains to be seen. Doesn't matter what we think or whatever. The whole point from the devs is they want you to speculate on this shit. They want you to at least think that things might be different, even if they end up not being so. And I'm fine either way, right? It doesn't matter if we go through the remake project and it's 99% FF7 original. It's my favorite game of all time. It's fine, dude. It's not that I necessarily want things to be different. I just, based off of what we've seen with the remake project, that's what I think's happening. I think there's going to be different stuff. And again, I don't know how much. But if it's just pretty much the FF7 story again and that's it, cool. I'm fine with that. I love that game. But on like the flip side of that conversation, as I've said, I think before in previous videos some time ago, I personally do want a continuation of like the FF7 story, like a continuation of the compilation. Not necessarily, I don't necessarily mean that like it has to be post like Dirge of Cerberus, but it's like a continuation of the story, like adding to the lore as opposed to like just kind of retelling FF7 with things pulled from the compilation. Like I want like a new development in the story, so to speak. And that's personally what I'm hoping for with the remake project. But again, if it's FF7 original over, again, that's perfectly fine. Another interesting quote from Hamaguchi here says, without again providing any major spoilers, besides Zack, who was not in the original Final Fantasy VII but will be making an appearance here, there's going to be other characters from Final Fantasy VII spin-offs that will be appearing in Rebirth as well. The quote comes from like a conversation where they're talking about like, they're aware that there's fans of characters of the spin-off projects, and then he goes on to say that right there, that there's going to be other spin-off characters that are in Rebirth, which is pretty cool because we kind of expected that, but obviously we didn't know for sure if they'd be in this game or the next game. And what the spin-off characters are going to be, it's hard to really know because there's characters from like past, present, future when it comes to like the timeline of stuff, if you want to call it that, from the compilation. I think a good guess, though, is Crisis Core related shit, since they dropped Crisis Core Reunion in between Remake and Rebirth to get you to know the character of Zack, but probably, as we've said before on the channel, to get you to know the other characters in the Crisis Core story. And is that Angeal? Is that Genesis? Is that Cissnei? Hopefully it's kind of a combination of all those. I do fully expect there to be Genesis, as I've said all the time on the channel. Because he's alive. Like Angeal, you can do like a angel ghost sort of thing, maybe talking to, or from the live stream talking to Zack, and Zack's alive, or even if Zack's dead too, whatever. But Genesis is actually alive. He's just like in slumber or whatever, in deep ground, or that's where he's supposed to be, anyways. But that doesn't mean he can't make an appearance, since they're doing kind of like a retelling, reinterpretation of the FF7 story. And then obviously Cissnei, like what's up with her? Like she's got to be in this game at some point. It's story. Also talk of like the bearded, hooded guy in Junon that's like looking at Rufus being, I think it was a Veld or something like that, which is from before Crisis. So it could be from kind of anywhere, right? It could be Crisis Core before Crisis. It could be other shit too. I don't know. I mean, with the UV DLC, we got to see like a lot of deep ground and characters from Dirge of Cerberus, right? With Vice and Nero and shit. So it's like you never know who the spin-off characters could be or where they're coming from. But I think Crisis Core is probably the best guess as of right now. I think that'll about wrap it up for the video, my dudes. We definitely need a trailer. We need something else to like really dig into and break down. Like these interviews are fun to talk about. It's cool to learn little things and tidbits here and there or whatever. But like, we need something we can really sink our teeth into. Like I know it feels like we just got TGS, but it's already been like more than a month, right? It's kind of crazy how fast time's going, which is good because that means we're getting to the game faster, which is ultimately the most important thing. But I just feel like we're just kind of, I don't know, they're like drip feeding information. There's these constant interviews coming out all the time with things to talk about, which is cool. But it's like I need some more of the game, not just people talking about the game. Or at least a demo. You could drop a demo for us all publicly if you know, that'd be kind of cool. Don't be afraid to do that. Let's do that, please. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @YT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.